Have you ever stopped to think that maybe your life is about to turn upside down? That something that seemed stuck for months, even years, could be just one step away from being unlocked? I'll show you 12 clear prophetic signs that prove when God has already decided. The time has come for your advancement, both spiritual and material. And I'm not talking about pretty phrases to brighten your day. I'm talking about concrete signs that many people ignore and then don't understand why they miss the right moment. Perhaps you're experiencing strange pressures, sudden changes, or even a feeling of unexplainable restlessness. This isn't a coincidence. It's a warning. God always leaves clues before releasing something big. And who knows, maybe these signs are already knocking on your door and you haven't noticed yet. In this video, I'll open your eyes to details that may be happening in your life right now, things that seem small but carry enormous prophetic weight. If you recognize just one of these signs, you can be sure God has set the heavenly clock for your advancement. Get ready, because what I'm about to share here will dispel any doubts you have about your future. You'll understand why so many obstacles have arisen, why doors have closed, and most importantly, why they're now about to begin to open. What you're about to hear isn't theory, it's spiritual reality that transforms destinies. So stay until the end, because when I reveal the 12 signs, you'll see them. Now you understand that God has left clear signs showing that the time for your breakthrough has come, and this knowledge completely changes the way you see your life. This revelation can't be confined to you alone. Just as this message opened your eyes, it can open the eyes of thousands of people who are still lost and don't understand what they're going through. So, cherish this transformation you've just received, like this video, and subscribe to the channel so more people have access to this truth. And write your words in the comments. Advance to mark that you are already living this new phase. So let's get straight to the point, because this first sign is the foundation for all the others. God's appointed time. It may seem simple, but in practice, this is where many people get lost. Because while you look at the delays, the closed doors, the unpaid bills, and the frustrations that seem to repeat themselves, God is already looking at his calendar. It's as if heaven has a specific agenda, an invisible timer, independent of your haste or your delay. And when this clock ticks, nothing and no one can stop it. This is the most moving part, because you realize it's not about luck, human effort, or coincidence. It's about something that has already been marked in the invisible, and that sooner or later will manifest itself in the visible. Perhaps you're experiencing one of those moments when everything seems to stand still. You pray, you work, you dedicate yourself, but you feel like you're running in circles. This generates anguish, doubt, and even anger at times. And then comes the burning question, why does it seem like things never happen to me? This is precisely where the truth of God's appointed time comes in. He doesn't work in haste, but neither does he work in delays. What he sets in heaven arrives at the exact moment, and when it arrives with the power to completely transform your life. It's not just a door that opens, it's a sequence of events that align in a way you never imagined possible. And what's more, when that time comes, it doesn't matter how many people doubted you, how many tried to get in your way, how many times you almost gave up. God always fulfills what he promises. The Bible is full of examples of this. Abraham had to wait decades to see the promise fulfilled. Joseph was betrayed, sold, and imprisoned before being exalted. David was anointed king, but still spent years on the run before sitting on the throne. In all these cases, it seemed like the delay was eternal, but in reality it was just a process until God's appointed time was fulfilled. And look, when it happened, it was so great that no one could deny it. And maybe that's exactly what's happening to you right now. You look at your life and feel like you've given it your all, but nothing changes. But what if I told you that this silence you're experiencing isn't punishment? It's a sign that the clock is about to turn. Think about it. How many times have you thought you were at rock bottom and suddenly something unexpected happened? Well, that wasn't a coincidence. It was a sign that God is still in control. His timing never fails. It may seem slow, but it's never late. I know waiting is difficult. Waiting isn't comfortable. No one likes to wait. You want to resolve things quickly, you want to see results, you want to move forward. But amidst this anxiety lies a harsh but liberating truth. If you move forward outside of God's timing, you could lose what was rightfully yours. It's like picking an unripe fruit. It may seem ready, but it has no flavor, no strength, no consistency. God waits for the right moment, the right day, the right time. And when that moment arrives, It's not a half-hearted blessing. It's something complete, ready and solid, truly changing your story. Now, let me ask you a direct question. Have you ever felt something inside you telling you that the time is coming? A feeling that you can't explain, but that makes you uneasy, as if there were a change in the atmosphere? If so, comment below. Time, because I want to know who is really noticing this movement. This is important because when you write, you are also declaring that you believe in God's appointed time. It's not just a comment. It's a way to align your faith with what you're hearing. And look, I'm going to tell you something you might never have stopped to think about. While you're there counting down the days, God is preparing not only what you'll receive, but also preparing you to receive it. Because there's no point in God releasing something great if you don't yet have the structure to handle it. The appointed time isn't just about circumstances changing, it's also about you being ready. And that explains a lot. It explains the delays, the struggles, the deserts. All of this is part of the preparation for fulfillment. So when you feel like nothing is happening, remember this: God isn't silent. He's working on things you can't yet see. He's moving invisible pieces, preparing people who will cross your path, creating connections that will only appear at the right time. It's as if he's putting together a giant puzzle, and you only have a few pieces. It seems confusing, but when the appointed time comes, all the pieces fall into place at once, and you understand that it always made sense. And there's one detail you can't ignore. When that time arrives, you feel it. It's as if your life begins to show small signs of movement, an unexpected connection, an opportunity that arises from where you didn't expect it, a door that opens without you forcing it. These are the first signs that the appointed time has begun to come to pass. And when you realize this, you'll look back and understand that every tear, every struggle, and every wait was worth it. But there's still something deeper about this time that almost no one talks about, and it's precisely what will help you identify even more clearly when this breakthrough is actually coming. True faith isn't waiting for everything to be resolved before believing. The faith that transforms is the one that sees before it even happens. This is the difference between those who merely talk about promises and those who truly experience miracles. Often you look at your situation and see only chaos, piled up bills, broken relationships, stalled projects. But that's precisely where faith comes in. Faith isn't blind. It doesn't ignore reality, but it sees beyond what meets the eye. It's like a different lens, capable of looking at the same seemingly impossible situation and seeing the future ready, already accomplished. This is how faith anticipates miracles, by believing and behaving as if the miracle has already happened. And this principle is so powerful that many people fail because they still wait to see before believing. But God's logic is different. You believe first, then you see. This changes everything, because from the moment you decide to act with this anticipatory faith, your posture changes, your way of praying changes, even your words change. You no longer speak as one who is lost, but as one who has already received. You no longer pray begging, but giving thanks, because deep down, you are already certain that what has been delivered has been delivered. This is the kind of faith that paves the way for spiritual and material advancement. This is why many teachings of great men of God emphasize the importance of visualizing the promise. It's not simply positive thinking, it's not self-help. It's aligning your mind and heart with what God has already determined. Have you ever stopped to realize that often doubt isn't in God's power, but in your ability to believe? You don't doubt that He can, but you doubt whether He will do it for you. This is where faith needs to be worked on, because while you doubt, you hinder the process. But when you truly believe, even if everything says otherwise, you begin to move toward fulfillment. Perhaps you've had that feeling of thanking God for something that hasn't happened yet. It may have been strange, it may have seemed illogical, but deep down you felt it was the right thing to do. This is anticipatory faith. And let me tell you, God honors this kind of faith. He honors those who believe to the point of living as if they've already received it. This is what made Abraham become the father of nations, even when he was already old. This is what made Hannah declare she would have a son even after years of barrenness. This is what moved ordinary people to experience extraordinary things. And look, I know you might be thinking, but how can I have this kind of faith when everything around me shows the opposite? The answer is simple. You need to nourish your faith more than your doubt. And how do you nourish faith? By praying, declaring the word, remembering the times God has delivered you before, connecting with testimonies that strengthen your hope. Faith doesn't grow on its own. It needs to be cultivated. It's like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger it becomes. If you only focus on problems, doubt grows. If you focus on God and the promise, faith grows. And here's something many people don't understand. Faith doesn't eliminate problems, but it changes your attitude toward them. You no longer look at the giant and think, I can't do it. You look and say, this giant has already fallen, because God has already determined victory. And when you act like this, even the people around you notice. Some may laugh, thinking you've gone crazy, but others will be inspired. That's why true faith isn't silent. It's contagious. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever experienced a moment where you believed against all the evidence and then saw the promise come true? If you have, write the word here in the comments. Faith. Because I want to see how many people here have already experienced this power. This will inspire others who may not have had this experience yet. And as you comment, consider this. Everything you hope for today is already ready in the spiritual world. The question is whether you have the faith to anticipate it and bring it into your reality. Because there's no point in God having set the time for your advancement if you don't believe you can live it. Faith is the bridge that connects what has already been decreed in heaven with what will happen on earth. It's what transforms destinies, accelerates processes, and opens doors. What makes it all even more incredible is that this faith that anticipates miracles doesn't have to be gigantic. The Bible says that faith, the size of a mustard seed, can move mountains. It's not about having perfect faith. It's about having genuine faith, believing even when the mind tries to sabotage it. What you need is to take the first step. Sometimes it's a prayer of thanksgiving. Sometimes it's a decision to stop complaining. Sometimes it's simply believing one more day. This is the daily exercise that makes the impossible become reality. And here comes a point that many people haven't yet realized. This faith that anticipates not only brings spiritual miracles, but also material ones. Because when you believe that God can completely transform your life, you begin to see opportunities that previously went unnoticed. You have the courage to take steps you wouldn't have taken before. You speak differently, position yourself differently, prepare differently. And that's where the spiritual and the material meet, because faith opens doors that human effort could never open alone. And there is a detail that will connect all of this with the next sign we are going to talk about. When you learn to live this anticipatory faith, you begin to notice that some circumstances that seemed stagnant begin to move suddenly. You know that moment when everything seems the same for months, even years, and then suddenly something changes. Overnight. This is one of the strongest signs that God has already set the time for your breakthrough. Sudden changes in circumstances don't happen by chance. It's as if you've been living in the same grey landscape for so long that you've grown accustomed to it, and suddenly the scenery changes completely without you having done anything different. This is how God works when He decides to turn the page on your story. Many people are confused when this happens because human logic doesn't understand it. You try to explain, but even you can't find a justification. A contact who never responded starts reaching out to you. A door that had been closed for years opens unexpectedly. A problem that seemed impossible to solve simply dissolves. This isn't a coincidence, it's an intervention. What seemed stagnant suddenly gains momentum, and you clearly sense that something bigger is at work. And here's the thing. These sudden changes usually happen in specific areas of your life that have been stuck for a long time. It's as if God purposely left that situation frozen, just so He could, at the right time, demonstrate His power. And when He changes in a way that leaves no room for doubt. You look and realize, this couldn't have been the work of human hands. It wasn't luck, it wasn't chance, it was God moving the pieces on the board. It's at this moment that you begin to understand why so many things went wrong before. It wasn't bad luck, it was strategy. Because if it had happened at the time you wanted, it wouldn't have had the same impact. When God allows sudden change, it's because the preparation process is complete and the promise needs to begin to be fulfilled. And it's precisely this unexpected turn of events that confirms that the appointed time has arrived. And perhaps you've experienced something like this before, but didn't realize it was a prophetic sign. Remember when you were about to give up on something, and out of nowhere, a solution, appeared? Or when you prayed for months and it seemed God was silent, but in a single day everything transformed? These are clear examples of how He works. He allows a situation to become hopeless only to later show that there are no limits to His actions. Let me tell you something important. When these sudden changes happen, your reaction matters too. Some people, instead of seeing it as God's answer, think it was just a stroke of luck and miss the opportunity to strengthen their faith. But those with open spiritual eyes understand that this is just the beginning. Progress isn't just about what happened in that moment. It's about the confirmation that the promise has come into effect. And look, I know it can be scary. Humans thrive on control, predictability. Sudden changes take us out of our comfort zone, shake up our routine, and demand quick adaptations. But it's precisely in this discomfort that you realize you're not in control. It's God showing you that He's already taken control of the situation. And when you trust, you realize there's no need to fear because He's already written the next chapter. Now tell me, have you ever experienced an unexpected change, something that seemed impossible and suddenly got resolved? I want you to comment below with the word change, because that way we'll see how many people have had this experience of turning the page in a way that only God could do. And don't underestimate this comment, because sharing your experience can open the eyes of someone who needs to recognize the signs. These sudden shifts are like traffic signals in the spiritual world. They don't appear by chance. They appear to signal that direction has been cleared. And the more attentive you are, the sooner you'll realize that God has already begun to move the landscape around you. And it's at this point that expectation grows, because after the sudden shift come other signs that further confirm that the time for your breakthrough has arrived. And the next sign is one of those that moves you deeply, because it involves something many people have experienced, but don't always understand. One of the most powerful signs that God has already set the time for your breakthrough is when He begins to speak to you in ways that are out of the ordinary. And often this happens through dreams and visions. I'm not talking about those confusing dreams that mix up everyday things, but dreams that move you, that stay with you, even after you wake up. Dreams that bring clear messages, that seem more real than reality itself. It's in these moments that God chooses to show you that something is about to happen. Have you ever noticed that, in many accounts in the Bible, God used dreams to reveal what was to come? Joseph, for example, received confirmation of his purpose in dreams long before arriving at the palace. Daniel interpreted dreams that changed the course of entire kingdoms. Even the birth of Jesus was revealed in a dream to Joseph, so that he could protect Mary and the baby. This shows that God uses dreams as a prophetic tool to prepare, warn, and even guide. When you begin to have these kinds of experiences, don't ignore them, because it's a sign that heaven is trying to communicate with you directly. The thing is, many people don't take this seriously. They wake up from a dream that deeply moved them, and instead of reflecting and praying about it, they simply forget and go about their daily lives. But when God sets the time for a breakthrough, these dreams come with greater intensity and clarity. It's as if He wants to ensure you have no doubt that something new is about to begin. And don't think it has to be a perfect or entirely symbolic dream. Often the message is simple: an open door, an illuminated path, someone speaking to you words that confirm what you already feel in your heart. And it's not just dreams. Visions happen too, and perhaps you've experienced them yourself. It's that moment when you're awake, praying, meditating, or even distracted, and suddenly a clear image appears in your mind, something that seems so real it scares you. It could be a fleeting scene, a written word, a memory that didn't make sense until that moment. This isn't a daydream. It's God showing that He's preparing something. When these experiences begin to repeat themselves, it's a sign that He's letting you see what's already been decided in the spiritual world before it manifests in the natural. And this is where you need to be careful. Not every dream or vision comes from God, so it's important to always seek confirmation. But when they align with what you're already experiencing and bring peace to your heart, they're very likely prophetic messages. That's why I say that ignoring dreams is wasting signs. When God speaks this way, He's essentially saying, I want you to be prepared, because what I'm about to do is too great to take you by surprise. Maybe you're going through exactly this right now. Maybe you're repeatedly dreaming about something or seeing images and symbols you don't understand. And in that case, the worst mistake would be to simply think it's a coincidence. God doesn't waste time talking in vain. He always has a purpose. And when it comes to spiritual and material advancement, these signs come to align your mind so that you believe before you even see. Now I want you to do something important. If you have ever had a dream or a vision that seemed like a message from God, write the word here in the comments. Dream. This will not only mark your faith, but will also inspire others who may be going through the same thing and haven't yet understood what's happening. Sharing is a way to confirm that you recognize the sign. And you know what the most impressive part is? When God begins to speak through dreams and visions, it's because change is already very close. It's as if He's anticipating what's coming, so you don't get lost in the process. And this is where something even more powerful comes in. When these signs appear, your prayer life begins to change completely. Have you ever noticed that when something big is about to happen, it seems like an invisible force calls you to pray more? It's no coincidence. It's one of the strongest signs that God has already set the time for your breakthrough. Suddenly you feel a different weight, an inexplicable desire to spend more time in prayer. It might be in the early morning, it might be in the middle of a busy day, but your heart begins to burn, and you realize you need to bow before God. This weight of persistent prayer doesn't come out of nowhere. It's placed by the Holy Spirit Himself to align you with what is about to be fulfilled. And it's interesting how this happens. You may have prayed for months for the same thing without feeling anything special, but when the appointed time approaches, the prayer takes on a different intensity. You pray and feel as if each word carries more power, as if each cry reaches God faster. It's as if heaven has opened above you, and your prayer is no longer just a request, but a prophetic declaration that the promise is in motion. Many people don't understand this process and end up getting confused. Some think, if I'm praying more, it's because I haven't received it yet. But in fact, it's just the opposite. You're praying more because fulfillment is very close. Persistent prayer isn't a sign of delay, it's a sign of alignment. It's as if God is saying, keep going because you're about to see what I promised. This burden is the final preparation, the confirmation that something great is coming. And there's a powerful detail to this. When you pray persistently, your faith grows. You begin to believe in a way you didn't before. Every time you place yourself before God, it's as if you're strengthening your spiritual muscles to carry what you're about to receive. Because, let's face it, there's no point in God releasing something great if you don't have the structure to sustain it. Persistent prayer is exactly what gives you that structure. It shapes your character, strengthens your mind, and increases your resilience. I know it can be tiring sometimes. You bend your knees and nothing seems to happen. But pay attention, even Jesus spoke about this when He told the parable of the persistent widow. She insisted so much before the unjust judge that she ended up getting what she wanted. And if even a fearless judge gives in to your insistence, imagine what God, who is just and good, does when you continue praying with faith. He doesn't tire of your voice. On the contrary, He rejoices in seeing you believe enough to persist. Maybe you're experiencing this right now. Maybe you've felt your prayers grow more intense, that you can't help but seek, that something is constantly pushing you toward God's presence. This is a sign, and it's not just any sign. It's one of the clearest that the promise is near. So, instead of becoming discouraged, rejoice. This burden isn't a punishment, it's a privilege. God is calling you to be an active part of what He will release in your life. And here, I want to open a space for you to participate. Tell me in the comments, have you ever felt this weight of prayer, this almost uncontrollable need to seek God more in certain periods? If you have experienced this, write the word prayer below. I want to see how many of you recognize this sign and can confirm how it manifests. This will strengthen not only your faith, but also that of those reading this. And do you know what's most powerful about all this? When prayer intensifies, outward signs soon begin to emerge that something is changing. Small things that previously didn't happen begin to move. Doors that were closed give signs of opening. It's as if heaven begins to manifest itself in a concrete way, not just within you, but all around you. And this brings us to the next sign that is simply impossible to ignore. Supernatural favor that appears in places and situations you would never imagine. When God decides the time has come for your breakthrough, something amazing begins to happen. You begin to experience favor in places and situations that, humanly speaking, had no chance of working out. It's as if the tide shifts in your favor in such a clear way that even those who doubted it notice. Supernatural favor is precisely this: doors opening where there were no doors before, people who never looked at, you beginning to reach out, opportunities arising in unlikely scenarios. It's a clear sign that it's not you who's moving things forward, but God who's already had his hand in your story. Maybe you've already experienced this in practice without even realizing it. It could have been that job you didn't have the CV to get, but you were called anyway, or that bill you didn't know how to pay, and suddenly an unexpected resource came along, or even that family problem that seemed unsolvable, and out of nowhere someone you never imagined became the key to reconciliation. This isn't luck, it's favor. And the most interesting thing is that when it appears, it usually doesn't come from where you expect. It comes from where you'd never look, and that's when you realize that favor doesn't depend on your strength, nor on the connections you think you need. It comes because God has decided it's time to show you and others that his word is greater than any barrier. It's that moment when strangers start treating you as allies, or when doors open in places you've never had access to. This is the kind of sign you can't deny, because even those who don't believe in God look at it and say, "This is inexplicable." And why does God insist on acting this way in unlikely places? Because if it were in predictable places, you might think it was all your merit. But when it happens in impossible places, there's no doubt, only he could have done it. That's precisely the purpose, to show that there are no limits to his actions. Supernatural favor is not just a gift, it's also a testimony so that others see and recognize that there is a living God who fulfills his promises. I know that often you look at your life and think, there's no way out here, this area is already dead for me. It could be in your finances, your marriage, your work, or your health, but it's precisely in these areas where you've given up that God usually releases favor. He takes what seemed like the end and transforms it into a new beginning. He chooses the unlikely to show that he is Lord over all things. When you begin to see this happen, know that it's a prophetic sign that heaven's clock has already ticked in your favor. Now I want you to reflect and participate. What's the most unlikely area of your life where you've seen God act? If you've experienced something like this, comment below. Favor to show that you recognize this movement. Besides declaring your faith, you'll also encourage others who need to understand that the impossible can become reality when God decides to act. And there's more. This favor doesn't mean everything will be easy, but that even when obstacles arise, something beyond logic will continue to push you forward. It's that feeling that you're being carried, that there's a greater force paving the way for you. And believe me, when the favor begins to appear, it attracts attention, generates reactions, and even raises resistance. And this brings us to the next sign, which often leaves many people confused, but is precisely confirmation that progress is even closer: the intensely increasing spiritual resistance. One of the things that most confuses people in the process of progress is when, instead of everything getting easier, it seems the struggle intensifies. You pray more, seek more, believe more, and suddenly the pressures multiply, criticism appears, and problems that never existed begin to surface. It's as if the environment around you becomes heavier. But this isn't a sign of failure. On the contrary, it's one of the clearest signs that you're in the final stretch before the fulfillment of the promise. Spiritual resistance increases because the enemy knows he can no longer stop what God has determined, so he tries to at least delay or make you give up. This increased resistance can come in many forms. People who once supported you begin to drift away. Simple situations become more complicated. Even your own mind seems more confused, filled with doubts and thoughts of giving up. This happens because the battle is no longer against flesh and blood, but against spiritual forces that understand that your progress will impact much more than just your life. The greater the promise, the greater the war that precedes its fulfillment. And if you stop to think, you may have noticed this at various stages in your life. Just when victory was about to arrive, that's exactly when the toughest struggles appeared. But here's the good news. This resistance isn't eternal. It only appears because something has already been released in the spiritual world and is about to manifest. Think of a locked door that has already been unlocked. The sound you hear isn't the door closing. It's the resistance of the last latch giving way. That's why during this period, it's so important not to back down. because many give up right on the eve of the new year. And it's in this context that another powerful sign begins to appear. God sends external confirmations to let you know you're not going crazy. You may be experiencing an inner war, but suddenly you begin to hear messages that speak precisely to your situation. A sermon you hear seems written for you. A person who doesn't even know your story speaks words that confirm what you've already been feeling, or even friends and family who knew nothing begin to say phrases that seem like messages from heaven. These external confirmations are God's way of strengthening your faith in the midst of resistance, and don't think this is rare. When the time is right, God always gives you signs to ensure you stay strong. He can use any channel, a sermon, a song, a casual conversation, even an online post that appears out of nowhere and speaks precisely to your pain. It's not a coincidence, it's a response. He knows that, in the midst of battle, you need confirmation to not give up. And when these confirmations are repeated, you realize that you're not just facing struggles, but that you're being prepared for victory. Now I want to invite you to actively participate. Have you ever experienced this contrast of feeling the struggle increase at the same time as you began to receive external confirmations? If you have, comment here. Confirmation, because I want to see who has already recognized this pattern in their lives. This comment isn't just engagement, it's also a way for you to declare that you understand the signs and that you won't be fooled by resistance. And what's more, when spiritual resistance and external confirmations work together, it's practically a guarantee that fulfillment is closer than ever. It's as if heaven and earth are conspiring in your favor, while the enemy despairs because they already know they've lost. This creates a unique environment, where you feel the pressure from one side, but also perceive a wave of confirmations from the other. And it's in this scenario that something even more profound happens. You begin to see the reason for all the struggle, because you discover that your progress isn't just about you, but about the impact your victory will have on the lives of others. Now you know how to identify clear signs that God has set the time for your breakthrough, and this completely changes the way you see what you're experiencing. This revelation brought direction and clarity, and just as it opened your eyes, it can transform the lives of many who still don't understand the processes they're facing. So, like this video and subscribe to the channel so this message reaches more people and strengthens those who need to hear it. And comment below. Advance, to declare that you have entered this new phase. What follows will further deepen what you've discovered today, because the upcoming content will reveal details that complete this journey and can accelerate the fulfillment of what God has already prepared. So enjoy the video already on screen, because it is the natural continuation of what you just received.